happy 250th America. And as we started last week with our reading of Pope, we're starting to realize there are deep sources of the ideas that we have as Americans about what's true and good and beautiful. And we are therefore here doing our public service, which is helping ourselves learn more about the ideas that the founding fathers had in their heads when they were writing the documents that we now quote as necessary foundations of our, well, whatever it is, our country, our nation, our community, our this being one of the central problems that, at least from my perspective as a medievalist, we seem to have a great deal of difficulty dealing with, because we're not a kingdom. We quite clearly not that. We have this common culture, but we're not sure where it came from, quite frankly. I mean, the more I studied the French Revolution, that was like, well, I could see some of it in things that, for example, Thomas Jefferson tended to say later in his life after he'd been to France. But there are ways in which founding ideas of America, and you all know from my ranting on the Mosaic Ark now for almost exactly 4 full years, I'm an American. And I hold certain things to be self-evident and true. But as a scholar of medieval Christianity, I'm sometimes not entirely clear, like, where they came from, these ideas, these self-evident ideas came from, because there's this gap between what people tended to claim, through the 15th century into the beginnings of the Reformation, and what the founders put in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. I mean, one of the things that's always confused me massively is, okay, so we have those 2 documents, and we basically have 2 paragraphs that we quoted each other about what we mean as a nation, right? There's the opening of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, and blah, 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 blah. And there's a list of complaints against the king. With the Constitution, there's the preamble, which those of us who are the right age, and those of you who've been, benefited from the revival of Schoolhouse Rock, can sing. We know the preamble. We know that, the Constitution is in order to establish a more perfect union, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, but where did that language come from? We know it's simply true. And we know, in order to exist as whatever kind of entity we are, nation, country, government, it's interesting that we're the United States of America, which is a very administrative claim, right? United States, which are political entities with administrative functions and economic and political, economics, maybe social. It's hard to say. Like, how did they band together as states? Of America, well, that's a location. So we call ourselves Americans, but as everybody loves pointing out, well, there's South Americans and Canadians and Mexicans too. They all get to call themselves something other than Americans, because they have countries that have titles that have something to do with other than being political entities. So we here on the Mosaic Ark are happy to have, in our sailing around in the internet, bumped into what we now know is the answer. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Okay, sing it. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Okay, I've got kid level, like, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and ensure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. I think they're kids singing it. Do ordain and establish this Constitution. Consider the United States of America. Okay, that's okay.
I have a civics test in my head where in 8th grade everybody was singing this, trying to remember it. Worked.
But consider what that's it, right? That's what we get. We the people, to establish a more perfect union, list off all of these governmental administrative functions and give it to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish. I mean, really? That's it? I mean, no wonder people have difficulty when pressed to define what it is that makes us Americans.
Why should they have difficulty, though? That's very concise.
It's boring. I want a king.
It's very simple.
Okay, you can defend its simplicity, please.
Defend its simplicity. We're establishing a union for the betterment of ourselves and our children and their children's children.
Grounded on what?
Right.
Grounded on what?
Grounded. Well, can you get that from the preamble? That it's grounded on it's grounded on natural rights.
No, you can't. No,
sure you can.
It's we the people. Okay, we always end up someplace that I didn't plan. I do actually have notes on what we were supposed to start with. Who cares? Okay,
it totally goes with what we read.
Yes, we're going to be talking about Alexander Pope again, and and this time will. Last week we talked about the Odyssey and Pope's influence generically on American storytelling and blah 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 blah. Today we're actually we promise that we will actually get to the essay on man that's in here, but first we have to set some stuff up for you, right, so that you understand why I am so happy finally to understand that our founders are reading Pope.
Everybody was reading Pope.
Indeed,
it sounds like
everybody was. Yes,
men, women, probably children were being taught. I had no idea he was this popular. I read a few of these things in college and thought, oh my gosh, he's so funny. What a clever writer. And he's just really is a joy to read. He's easy to read. But I had no idea this popularity was so thorough in the 18th century. And it was.
I didn't either. And I'm amused that I knew vaguely enough that Pope's important to look at the Dunciad, which I think I'd seen referenced somewhere in the flurry of making fun of journalists back in the day. The journal. Are we all enjoying how Mr. Musk took to task the editor of The Economist? Oh yes. The Dunciad has nothing on what he just pointed out to her.
He's been reading Pope.
They really all hate you.
How do they not know this? Or they're just amused by it because we're so beneath them that they don't care?
Probably the latter, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually. So I was again just on X, sort of reading some of the gloating about who this woman is, who's the editor of The Economist, and the degree of status that she has in the prestige economy, and therefore yes, she probably does look down on the rest of us as nothing, which is topical for our conversation tonight. I knew Pope was important as an example of poetry, right? It's like if you list off the great English poets, you get Chaucer, Shakespeare, Milton, Pope, Byron, and stuff like that. So he, as far as I was concerned, he was just one in a series. Who wrote an iambic pentameter, and we needed to learn iambic pentameter, and I'd use that section from Essay on Criticism, The Little Learning is a Dangerous Thing, as a thing that I kept over my desk when I was writing my dissertation.
Nice.
Because it's such a nice sort of, it's not really, the thing is, if you take quotations from Pope out of context, they turn into all sorts of things that don't fit with what Pope was actually talking about. So I was actually a little sorry to find out where that fits in his essay on criticism, but never mind. Right. In the essay on criticism, he's saying, like, you critics think you know everything, but you actually know nothing. And then if you like actually read the stuff and start studying, you'll realize that there's more out there, which actually did fit with what I was using it for, to get myself to think about how the further you get into a study, you're climbing up this mountain and you think, oh, I'm going to get to the top and then I'll see everything. And of course, what you see is all the stuff you still don't know. So that works.
Well, it's like the old graphic with the giant circle of the universe, and it says, here's your PhD, and it's a tiny little dot, right? Contributing to all the knowledge in existence. Just to keep you humble.
So what the reality of that is, you start with a circle this big, and it gets bigger, and like you get this far when you're in college, right? And it gets a little bigger when you're grad school, and then it gets, and the thing is, all that's happening is you do know more. There's no more inside of what you know, but the outside is getting bigger and bigger.
It's getting bigger and bigger.
So you're realizing how I still don't know all of these things, and I keep learning these things that I don't know. Yeah,
because humility keeps you learning. That's why.
As Pope said, right? A little learning is a dangerous thing. So we're continuing to learn here on the Mosaic Ark, and we're very grateful that all of you are here joining us on our continuing journey around the oceans of knowledge. I had this vague understanding that Pope was a thing, but I had no idea until I was reading. I'll put this out because I did learn it from her, Judy Hodgkiss's book. I have actually read this book this week now. I hadn't read it last week. I glimpsed at it. My learning has I've gotten halfway up a mountain. That she pointed out how important Pope was, in fact, to the rhetoric that went into the Declaration of Independence. And I'm like, oh, this really does change everything, because I'm not kidding. To me, okay, the passage from the Declaration, which is, it's not quoting Pope, but it is channeling Pope, right? I'll read it again. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, there are two different claims in the paragraphs. The second one is the one that people get most misty about, right? That our self-evident truths and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness scans really well. So you feel like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? It's 12 syllables, and it's a good concluding, rousing Spencerian end line. And it mentions the Creator and these rights and created equal and stuff. But that's basically all you get, right? It's just this assertion of this truth, and then the rest of the document is, and we, therefore, these are the reasons we're mad at you, King. Bye.
Yeah, but the first thing they did is to talk about natural rights.
Right, but it's just, okay. What are they? Right. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? It's like if you're making this huge philosophical claim, where's the rest of it?
But it sounds very broad, but given that everybody was reading the same material, maybe they actually already understood what it meant and didn't feel the need to write it down. There may be some people who think that there's just no such things as natural rights. There's only a natural rights for kings, or noblemen. And then, I guess the prosperity trickles down, I guess. So this was a little bit different in that they said, no, everybody is equal in their natural rights, and although they didn't say it, the implication there is that nobody's really born a king. I think they were rejecting that.
They don't say they don't say any of that in this paragraph.
No, they don't. I think this is what they were thinking when they wrote that.
Well, that's always the question, isn't it? Exactly what were they thinking when they wrote? And the Adams and Jefferson they're the second they tried drafting something to start with, and it didn't come out nearly as smooth. And so they tried. This is the second group with Adams, Jefferson, Franklin, and one other guy whose name is it Sherman? No,
Sherman.
Is it Sherman in the four?
Yes. Sherman the shoemaker. I think it was a shoemaker or something like that.
I don't know, but I know my aunt married into that family. My mom's aunt married into that family.
Of course she did.
She was the aunt was a doctor. She's a radiologist in New York City, and she's my mom's aunt. Okay, so whatever. Anyway, that Hotchkiss has shown that Jefferson very purposefully changed. They had originally written life, liberty, and property, which is the phrase that is typically associated with John Locke. And of all the texts that I have to teach in Eurociv, one of the ones that I find most difficult and most frustrating to teach is his letter on toleration. So I'm not like super inclined to go read a lot of Locke. That he is making the argument for property rights and interest. It's very interesting. It's, I have known this for a while, but doesn't understand the significance of it. Very interesting that Jefferson takes property out and puts in pursuit of happiness, which then you could say out of context, which is the way most of us have come to these paragraphs. Out of context, that sounds like, okay, so we're all just like hedonist commercialists.
Well, yeah, you can say that, but that's why we have something called originalism, right? When the justices try to decide what did they mean when they wrote that, and some people aren't originalists. Some people think it should be whatever's current, but that's not what the law always was.
Well, the postmodernist, the reader reception is the reader's reception is what it is, and therefore we'll just go with whatever we attach the meaning to now, which is, I mean, it's like somewhat what we were talking about last week, was saying what Nolan has done with the Odyssey is do that, right? It's like what does the story mean to me? I'll just tell it that version, which is in fact the way culture lives, right? Retellings of stories so that they take on new significance. Pope's version of Odysseus is not most people reading that now would probably not go, oh yeah, he got it right. I think they'd have a lot of trouble with Pope's version.
Why?
Because it's more explicitly Christian than anything else, and we saw that even in the section that we read when he's talking about the free will that the people are born with, which I don't think Homer cared about.
That's interesting. Now I read something about Homer. Oh gosh, I see now. I should have taken notes. I was doing this very quickly, but somebody had brought up the expression "know yourself." That came from Homer, and then it's picked up because I read it as we were preparing today. It's picked up by Pope, probably because he read Homer.
It's famous from the Socrates going. It's inscribed at Delphi as part of the oracle, and but the know thyself is not free will. Those are two different philosophical.
No, I'm not saying it is.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that some of his. You said that Pope's Odyssey was very Christian, but yes. I thought it was just a translation. But he might have also been looking for what the Christians could palate as a Christian idea that came from a pagan people too, because that's a thing.
Oh yeah, Christians do that all the time. And yeah. Again, we're not going to do the Odyssey again, but back on X, right? People are now they're picking. I said something about how it's really Christian, and but people got mad at me. But I've seen more and more people saying yes. What Nolan did was to give a Christian reading on the events of the story, and
he did but it does also sound like he completely changed the meaning.
He did
of the journey, which is not the right thing to do, and still call it the Odyssey. Call it something else. Call it inspired by the Odyssey, but it's not the same story.
I can dislike his movie and still recognize the artistic process that's going on here. And I can say I don't like his version, and I'm still not tempted to see it because I haven't liked any of his other movies. So there you go.
I have liked some of his other movies. I think I mentioned this last week. It's a crapshoot. Tenet was horrible. I mean, I want my 3 hours back. It was bad, but I mean, the first Batman movie was pretty good. I thought Inception was okay. It's not really my favorite. Interstellar is interesting, but I think like a lot of his movies, they're just too long.
Okay, so what's interesting about all of this is we constantly get drawn into talking about what everybody else is talking about at the time. Right now, Nolan, right? And that it is much easier to have this kind of intensity of engagement when in fact you're dealing with something that everybody else is reading. And I think this is or watching or something like that. The problem that we're dealing with generically in the American culture right now is, what is it that's common to our 340, 50 million people conversation? Well, if half of us are following Elon Musk on X, it's what he says, right? So is Elon Musk our new pope?
But yeah, what did the king say today?
Right?
Huh?
Yes, and that's the thing, that the culture is shaped by the things that people can have common conversations with. That's why the weather works. Right? It's like you're suddenly this INTJ small talk. If you're in a situation and you don't know how to, you don't know where to start. Some women are really comfortable with asking personal questions of each other. I'm terrible at it. I hate it. Right? It's like if I ever ask you about your actual personal family life, we've probably known each other for a decade. And I might still not ask you, right? But the weather, that's great. We can talk about, the smoke was really bad this week, or look, it's, it's rainy. And conversation builds on common ground. Like that's what we need for a culture. So one of the things that's always been mysterious to me, going back to the founding, right? And the more I read in Fred Anderson's book on the 7 Years' War, the more I'm convinced I was actually accurate about this. One, it's a small number of people. Like there's not that many people living in the colonies, even at the Revolution. It's 2 or 3 million people. It's really not very many people. Two, like the 7 Years' War. Most of these war engagements, it's a huge battle is a few thousand people, right? That's even in 18th century terms, that's tiny, right? They're having battles in Europe that are Frederick of Prussia is losing tens of thousands of people in a day, right? So there's just...
I want to point out though that this was frequently called, and I didn't even realize this had changed, the French Indian War. And if people would still refer to it as that they would understand it really was about territory and not populations. It's more immediately recognizable as the French and the Indians banded together to fight against the British, and also the Indians always leave that part out, different tribes, over territory and who was going to control it.
Right, but the Indians played both sides. So
that's what I just said.
One of the reasons
they were with the British and they were with the French.
Yeah, one of the reasons the French lost is because the Indians lost confidence in them as allies, or whatever they could. The French stopped doing the things that the Indians expected them to do in order to keep their relationship, and so they
just calling it the 7 Years' War doesn't say anything other than it was 7 years long.
Well, what they're doing with that is it's like the 30 Years' War, the 7 Years' War. They want to.
They're trying, but they're failing. I don't know.
Okay, but the problem is that the war in the colonies is affected by what's going on the continent, and also, as we learned in talking about the East India Company in India. So calling it the 7 Years' War is to say this was a conflict that had multiple theaters. It's basically the First World War.
I didn't pick that up just from the name. Although I know when I was younger, it was referred to as both, but then people just stopped using French Indian and said it's the 7 Years' War. Right. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't tell me anything about it.
But it's important that it was also in Europe and in India, because that affects the way in which Parliament, and particularly under Grenville, he's in power for a bit and then he's out. But by the time he leaves, they've redefined the way in which the government in London considers the colonies, and this is the colony. So most of the rest of the Declaration of Independence is all those grievances that they have now against Parliament and the King. And those are the kinds of things that we had to memorize in school, right? The Stamp Act and quartering troops, and the tea with the problems with tariffs, and you and I talked about that with James, right? The tea that gets thrown in the harbor is about whether or not they're going to buy from the East India Company or do their own trading independently, and all of that those are the French and Indian War, 7 Years War, it's like, and I should know the dates from reading this book. It's the 1750s to the 1760s. It's a period in there.
That was the 40s, but
no, it's a decade. Consider it's like we had it's as the American Revolution happens as close in time as for us now, say the end of Obama's administration. It's really quick. It's up to the 7 Years War. The colonies had just been kind of, going along, doing their stuff, hating on each other, because they did, and developing their own economy and such. And because of the requirements to raise troops, create, do all the provisioning for those troops, hold fortresses, deal with the fact that now they've made enemies of the people in the interior. So there's raids on if there's backcountry settlement, particularly down in the Carolinas, if there's backcountry settlement, now they need more troops to protect the English settlers against and the Indians are like 20 different groups, right? And that affects the way they behave too, because the Iroquois start the whole thing by trying to use the French and the British against each other, because the Iroquois want to drive out the people that they are in antagonizing to take control of the Ohio Valley, right? So it's like all of these multiple groups. And, the commanders that the British send over, sometimes they understand. There's one guy, Forbes, who seems to understand any of it, like how important the Indians actually are to the entire dynamic. But a lot of them don't get it. Wolfe, famously, the guy that takes Montreal, right, and then dies. It's unclear that he really appreciated any of what he was getting into. He gets his glorious death and gets the painting, and and there you go, right? So all of the conflicts that happen in that 7 years of provisioning and quartering troops, and the fact that it takes a long time for the British to recognize that the colonial troops, the provincials, don't like being bossed around by the regulars, particularly when the regular officers start out with jurisdiction over everybody in the provincial troops. And so, as far as the provincials are concerned, you'll have general being, bossed around by a colonel or something, right? They build up all of their grievances against Parliament and the king because of during the 7 Years War, and a decade later they're still mad, and it's only gotten worse because the Parliament has decided they're going to use the colonies to get as much the colonies should pay to help take care of themselves. We spent all this money taking care of them. No, what Parliament actually spent most of its money on was protecting Hanover, because these are the Georges, right? And they spent most of their money protecting Hanover from, oh God, and I got this Crucible of War is 700 pages of text, another 200 pages of footnotes. It's huge, right? And I'm sorry that I can't do it perfectly. A good deal of the debt that Parliament runs up it's about helping Frederick of Prussia fight off the Austrians and the Russians, so that Hanover doesn't get taken over by any of these places. And the only reason they care about Hanover is because that's where the Hanoverian kings have their home territory.
Sounds a bit familiar.
Are now the King of England, George, and George, right?
No, it sounds a bit familiar because our Congress is doing the same thing now and thinking we're not going to care that our money's going overseas constantly to protect other people.
It's a long British tradition. Consider that.
Isn't it,
right. So, the Declaration of Independence makes a lot more sense when you realize, they're a little pissed off by the way that it's a post-war society already that has been through a lot of changes. But this is the most interesting thing that Anderson points out is you've created an entire generation of men who served in that war. And as provincials, they know they have reasons to dislike the redcoats. They have reasons to dislike the regulars, because, they got caught up. They have experience. They're veterans. And so when, these new rules come along, all of this stuff in the we know who we are politically, and we don't want you around anymore. That's what they're saying in the first paragraph.
Well, there was a lot going on. Parliament didn't do itself any favors by claiming the Americans had only the British to thank for protecting them, when they in fact were picking up guns and doing it themselves. Right. In this war, like you said, they were now trained, and they were at war for 7 years.
Right.
Because of, politics was instigated by Britain, not by the Americans. So there was a lot going on, but that was part of it.
But see, if you put all of that in, then the context, right, the meme, the cultural conversation, what they say is, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which, and then this laws of nature and nature's God comes out of nowhere, entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. But they're dissolving the political bonds. That's it, right? And then generations of scholars one of whom I had to read in college, Barrington Moore, big book called States and Social Revolutions, claiming that the American Revolution, unlike the French Revolution, is not a social revolution. There's no actual reorganization of the structures of society in the American Revolution. Right. That happens for us in the Civil War. But before that, it's just, and I think, there's reasonable cause to that it's a political dispute, and they're dissolving the political bands, and saying, it's appropriate. It's a very weird sort of claim. It's appropriate among the powers of, the opinions of mankind. What's mankind? Who is listening, right? And we're going to tell you, right? It has both this very particularity and this lofty philosophical register simultaneously. But the only thing there, I always found the American Revolution intensely dull, frankly, because it's literally politics. That's all it is. We're going to create a different political entity. It's going to be the United States. We, the people, are going to, make this constitution of how the government's going to function. Done and dusted. That's America. And I'm like, okay, that is hardly very mythological as far as I'm concerned. Where's the grand story in that?
Well, I think that was the fighting part. You skipped over. It's not boring.
Well, but the sort of, we end up, they're not calling themselves a new nation. A lot of the language that we now use to fight over a lot of things like ethnicity and language and race and all 19th century romanticism, completely.
Yeah.
Right. It's not in their vocabulary in 1776. It's political. Which doesn't make it sound very, metaphysical at all. It's just, okay, nature's God. Maybe we'll get there.
To the British.
What?
Seem to be to the British. How dare you, sir?
Yeah, but that's just because the thing is, the British are busy right now. They've got a German king. They're busy, establishing, control over the markets in India, because Clive has been given the feudal lordship of a region in Bengal. They're perfectly happy capturing places. I loved in the reading the French and Indian War. Okay, so they're going to take over Montreal and Quebec, which have been founded by the French, and just say, okay, we're your king now. They don't care about culture and nation and ethnicity. Zero. What they care about is political power.
Yeah, well, what they cared about was people recognizing their authority.
Yes.
And the ones that didn't got pushed out and became Arcadians. And the ones that did stayed there.
Right, but it's totally political. It's utterly political. It's, do you recognize our jurisdiction over you to tax you?
Yeah. And the answer was no.
But you can see how this could be confusing for people now when we say, well, civic humanism, civic nationalism, right? Anybody who comes here and, swears to live by our laws now automatically becomes an American. And there are certain people in the world, some of whom we have spoken to, who say, no, that's not true. Nations have, all these other things. So they're not just living under a particular administration. That is literally all the United States of America was. Now, you can argue about posterity. That's interesting.
No, I was going to argue about that.
No, not
I was
you.
Argue about
generically.
Yeah, okay.
13
separate colonies. yeah, we know of whom we speak. But no, 13 separate colonies. You're right. They wanted to form a union, but they weren't considered. They were almost like 13 separate countries.
States.
Because they had their own, they had their own constitutions.
Yep.
They had their own ethnic mixes. They definitely had their own religious mixes.
Yep.
And in fact, some of those laws stayed on the books until the 20th century. There were certain towns, and I want to say it's New Jersey, and I think it was, where this is where there was a town where you had to belong to the specific church. They had an established church, this town, and it was not illegal up until maybe the 1960s. Stuff like that wasn't illegal.
Right.
So I don't think people realize how very different these people were. They were forming a union, but they were still separate entities.
But it was a political entity. They were the Declaration of Independence is dissolving political bands, and they are, to ourselves and our posterities, it's like we the people. They don't define who the people are in that statement in the Constitution.
I just remember the church. It was the Moravian Church.
Right.
So
they're German.
Remind me, it was New Jersey or Pennsylvania, something like that.
And there are other people, it's like, and this is why with the 14th Amendment and the sort of living under the jurisdiction that we're also arguing about right now. So jurisdiction has a mystical power. We need to deal with that, which we're hopefully going to get to in this long-winded conversation about Pope we're going to be having over the next several weeks, because it's going to take a while. But the sort of mystical reality that the Declaration and the Constitution both point to is a political arrangement. And that really, really, really matters, because then we get these other claims about opinions of mankind and nature and God and creator and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And they're at different, it's like, the lofty arguments, I have studied the primary documents for the French Revolution a fair amount, at least certain ones I've read over and over again to teach them. And the way the French argue, this is a massive difference between continental French, therefore Roman law, and English common law. And this featured in some of the French and Indian War, because once the British take over in Canada, they're bringing in a completely different legal system from the one that the French have been used to. And the primary difference between the civil law that developed out of the Justinianic Roman code over the course of the Middle Ages that turns into what most of the continent recognizes as law is based first on principles and on judges' decisions. Judges decide whether or not you're living. Things have happened according to the principle of law. To English people, that sounds completely insane, because our version of things is the common law develops over the course of decisions that have been made. So we have precedent, right? So you want the and that's the way our Supreme Court argues. We're going to go and look at all the previous places that these kinds of decisions have been made and make an argument that these fit together in this string, and therefore that's what our understanding should be. That's not the way the civil law is decided, and it's a big deal to be living under those two different kinds of. I think New Orleans still has some of the Justinianic feel to it. Maybe.
So the way it was explained to me years ago was that we follow Roman law for contract law and common law for criminal law, or vice versa. I can't remember which one it was, but
that sounds right. Actually,
we still have both of those as our legal history in this country. New Orleans has additional ones that were under Napoleonic law,
right?
And they have very unique structures there too, which I can't speak on because I haven't studied it at all. I just know it exists. So there's 3 different ones running in the country in different places still to this day. They have their unique laws in different states.
Well, and you said it correctly, and that is actually true. I simplified it, and now we complicated it again. Roman contracts, so medieval law develops at all these different registers. There's the canon law and the civil law, which are the church law and the Justinianic law, plus the English common law. The English people that are used to living under the English system tend to that we understand the problem of precedent, right? So if you say, if you're arguing from previous cases, that's our tradition, and that's the way the English make law. The French don't do that in the same way. I mean, I don't even know what kind of case books they keep, right? Because what they have is, and for example, I was talking about this because the French Revolution comes much more out of that tradition, right? Robespierre, when he's making his arguments for the terror, is arguing on the basis of, principles, right? Big, lofty principles, like, make terror the order of the day.
Principles of genocide. Okay.
Well, yes, but he can do it, right? Because he's like, virtue is, unflinching justice and such. English people go like, oh my gosh, you're crazy. How can you do this? We've never done it that way. Well, yes, we think he was. But
I'm sure his victims think he was too.
That kind of argument is on a completely different. So when Jefferson goes and he hangs out in France for a while, he comes back insane, as far as I can tell, because he does start thinking more in terms of those absolute principles that the French think in, which don't fit with the English context. Okay, so let me things I was having to prove, and then I'm going to look at some of the comments here. One, our founding documents have some very interesting language in them, but it's not explained at any length. Right. It depends. I mean, what you're saying is it depends on the community's interpretation, which is our common law version of things, right? It's like what was the precedent? Where did this come from? How did we argue this? Why did where did this particular practice come from? We think in those terms. There weren't very many people living in the colonies at the time. Even in this war that takes place, it's fairly small battles, even when they're bigger engagements for the region. The colonists get used to having that kind of problem of organizing for the logistics for the war as much as anything, right? Feeding all of those soldiers and keeping them alive during the war, the winter and things like that. All of this comes into it. What is not present in the colonies in this period is a gigantic reading public in in the way in which you might have, I don't know, even at the aristocratic level of the people who, her ancestors, the Economist editor, her ancestors probably participating in these salons, right? These philosophical conversations and such. There's Benjamin Franklin manages to become super important because he sets up printing presses in Philadelphia and, basically defines the common language of a big chunk of the population. Because in fact, there are printers in the colonies. This is making me think I want to study more on, like, the Stamp Act is really irritating to them because they're going to have to pay for everything they print, basically,
including marriage licenses, anything like that.
Right, all that stuff.
You have to pay for everything. They were getting nickel and dime to death, as we would say today.
But some of the reality of it is, and this is, the British are going to love this, guys. Get a grip. We don't have that big we don't have this giant literary community in the colonies in 1776. We have a few guys in Philadelphia writing a text, and therefore one of the things that's always confused me is, like, exactly what are they reading? Like, where are these ideas coming from? They cannot be coming from Robespierre, because Robespierre hasn't done his thing yet. They don't feel French to me because they don't have the same character. I mean, maybe they're reading Voltaire because he's English and he's a sneaky guy, but he's also, like, making fun of Sor Maria de Agreda, so I don't like him. The difference between what's being printed and read in the enlightened Europe and what's actually activating people in the colonies to make the kinds of political claims that they are. This, to me, has always been a bit of a black box. And it stayed something of a black box, even when I read things like Albion Seed, which is much more about just the folk ways and the convictions that people have about how to set up a community and how to get married and relations between the sexes and stuff. There's not this, one of the big, sort of problems that we have in American intellectual culture is it's all Boston for a really long time.
Yeah, because they taught their children to read, boys and girls. And then they were unique in that way in the colonies.
Well, so did the Presbyterians, but they don't have a big. It's like let me see if I can get this straight across. It's 2 or 3 million people. There's not that many of them that are reading Descartes, frankly, right?
No,
right.
there wouldn't be. No. Who would have time to do that?
They can't even read Adam Smith before 1776 because Wealth of Nations is published in 1776.
They taught their children to read because they wanted them reading the Bible.
Yes, they're reading the Psalms.
Not because they wanted, right. Not because they wanted them to read like Voltaire or anybody else.
Yes, right. So what's in their heads that they all band together and turn into this big philosophical community that has these grand and lofty ideas about nature and God and rights and the pursuit of happiness? We will pause for comments. All right. Yeah, so John Myers says, even though Franklin was in Pennsylvania, the Free Library of Philadelphia didn't exist until the end of the 19th century. Excellent point. And to the 19th century is huge in terms of the spread of a lot of the institutions. But yes, the libraries, schools like the one I teach at, right, they're founded in the late 19th century. So, Harvard and Yale may have been around in the colonies since the 17th century. So was, where I went to graduate school. Columbia was founded before but you have to consider, like, what are they reading? We need to know what they're reading. We need to know what's in their head. John saying, not sure what was available before that. Okay. So John Abrisi saying, in Australian constitutional jurisprudence, there is a concept of implied, in that it is implied that some things were not included because they were implied or taken for granted at the time. One such ruling was the implied right of political communication, which stopped one government from restricting political advertising. Okay, that inadvertently explains to me something in the Aussie guys rundowns of the movies that I've been watching, where he makes there's this underlying sexual import in the movie in the movie, and his alter ego says, "No, they didn't say that," and he's like, "No, but it's heavily implied." Right? Implied in Australia clearly means something more than it does even to us. So,
well, no, it doesn't, because it's what we talked about just a few minutes ago. It's about originalism. What did they mean when they wrote that? Because it didn't explicitly state everything. What were they thinking when they wrote that? What was going on when they passed this law, for instance? Just pick any random law that's come before the Supreme Court. It's right, the same thing.
The Supreme Court does not argue in terms of it's heavily implied. I mean, literally,
well, not anymore. Not since Roe versus Wade was overturned because of its emanations of penumbras. Yes,
right.
That did not stand. But they do look at what the intent was.
Intent. We talk about intent. This is different. Yes. Implied means something else, right? And I think in this,
maybe not.
Well, no, it needs to. It really needs to, because what we're trying to get at is, in fact, the roots of the huge debates that we're living through right now. And that they can hinge on the penumbra, right? Implied in Australia is going to have a different connotation than it does for us. I'm just saying it does.
I don't know.
I think it definitely does. It's not just I'm saying it out loud because I'm an American, not an Australian. It's a heavily implied intent. We argue intent.
I'll say what I want.
we argue intent, but that's going to be something else again, right? So. And this is the originalism is, okay, what are the connotations of the vocabulary they're using at the time in these original documents that make sense in their terms? That is what we're worrying about, because that's the way we Americans argue. So that matters. Yes. We don't like heavily implied. It's either said or not said.
And we'll say that explicitly.
Myers is saying, gee, the more things change. Okay. University of Pennsylvania existed before the city library. That's interesting. Yeah.
Ben Franklin started it. Yeah.
But the university?
But he started it with his own lending library, but he was probably lending out to friends and people he knew, a bit like, well,
right.
I don't know if Jefferson lended it out. He willed it to Congress. That's our Library of Congress. But yes, he had started that.
Myers is saying, seems like the only thing that matters is, do you accept the empire or not? That the 7 Years' War. I mean, goodness, guys, go read Fred Anderson's Crucible War. It will enlighten. I mean, it's one of these. Whoa! It changed my view of everything. I was reading it because I wanted to understand where all the debt came from, because that's really important for the way in which the Parliament, makes new legislation about what the colonies need to pay. But it's also this veteran experience of having been in the war that changes the colonists' understanding of what they can accomplish as assemblies that make decisions about raising armies and things like that.
Yeah, and actually that concept about the 7 Years' War changing the Americans' view of themselves and their place in the empire is the subject of the movie Washington that just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's about his foray into public life, not just a farmer, but into politics and into the history of this new country that was starting. It hinges on the 7 Years' War and his experiences there.
That's great. Yeah, you were explaining that to me, and I was like, "This sounds really good." That sounds like, and that's what Hotchkiss was talking about when she realized in her video classes that she's doing for the Promethean Action channel that she needed to talk about Alexander Pope, because in the Washington movie he goes into he gate crashes a party, or he goes to a party he wasn't invited to, and there's some little conversation about Pope and having read this essay on man or something like that. I need to see the movie now, because now I've read more Pope than I have listened to the movie. And then, given all of these things that we've been talking about, looking for the sort of sources of our stories and our mythologies and our feeling of like what's real, right? The magic power of we the people have sovereignty. That's a big claim, right? Why, right? Where does that come from? What is it? And my sort of feeling of, as a historian, saying, I just haven't, I read around in this and that, and I've never heard anybody. I took classes in American history in college. I read the stuff about states and social revolutions. I teach the French Revolution. Can't find it, right? And you're sort of blind like this, going around like this, but it's in front of you all the time. It's Pope, and it's Pope in these amazing ways. So here he is, looking dashing and less, sort of debilitated and disfigured than he actually was.
It's a very heroic looking picture of him, yes. His actual physical appearance was quite different.
Poor man. I was reading, he got trodden on by a cow when he was growing up.
The cow or a horse? I'm surprised he lived. No wonder he had a spinal problem.
But I think that was independent of the cow. So...
Oh my!
This was not a man who had a lot of physical, happiness, which is interesting, right? It's like but he can write, and he can write these poems, and he writes this poem, the one we're going to be talking about, because as Hotchkiss is trying to show, and I've read the rest of her book now, and I understand a little bit more of her book is not so much about what Pope says as how you need to understand that he is actually influencing Bolingbroke, or Bolingbroke is influencing him. And the problem is, after Bolingbroke has, multiple like political ups and downs in his career. And at some point, Bolingbroke falls out of favor. Pope, after having written the essay on man, dedicating it to him, and saying, Bolingbroke's really brilliant and his philosophy is great and stuff, gets embarrassed and says, I never knew him. So we're not, as much as we may like Pope's poetry, we're a little less sanguine on his character, because he seems to have, he wrote the Dunciad, right? He's friends with Jonathan Swift, so Gulliver's Travels guy and stuff. This is a hard time. Pope is Catholic. He doesn't have access to power. He doesn't have access to beauty.
He did not have access to education either.
True.
He was self-taught.
Right.
Catholics were barred from attending university in England.
Right. So all of these things, he gets a friendship with Bolingbroke for some time, gets to be in Bolingbroke's sort of fancy circles, and dedicates the essay on man to him. Now Bolingbroke, and this is the short version of what's in Hotchkiss. Bolingbroke is interesting because, and I can't do his politics in very much detail. You're going to be happy to hear that. When in 1715 he has to run away to France, because although he'd been powerful in Queen Anne's ministry in her government, he sides with the Jacobite succession against George I, and so he has to run away. Which now gets a little confusing and strange, because he runs away to France, where, interestingly enough, he becomes friends with people who are close friends with Sophia of Hanover. Is that right? She's on screen right now, so go back. Okay. She's Sophie or Sophia. That's why I keep getting like tangled.
Sophie is your aunt that runs a deli. It must be Sophia.
It's Sophia.
Sophia's more
Sophia's well, no,
legal.
It's both. It's both. Okay, that's the problem. She's Electress Sophia or Sophie of Hanover, and this is by unidentified painter, Royal House of Hanover. Okay, so Sophie of Hanover should have been queen, which is interesting, but she died. Wait, no.
She should have been Queen of England?
Yeah. There's all this stuff about, it's like when Queen Anne dies, none of her children have survived, and so they don't want a Catholic, which apparently Bolingbroke sides with James Stewart for it's all court politics, right? So they have to go to the Protestants. Sophie of Hanover was in line to be to succeed, but dies. No, is it George the First or George the Second? You guys, you're going to learn all this because I'm garbling it, right? Sophie of Hanover was a good friend of our next guy, Leibniz. And the short version of all of this is Bolingbroke, while he's in France, is associated with salons that have lots of people that are friendly with both the Hanoverians. Two of Sophie's siblings convert to Catholicism, so it's like who's on whose side, right? So they're out of the succession, and she's still in it. But on the other hand, she's friends with Leibniz, and Leibniz is, of course, the great. Well, I think Newton picked the fight, but enemy of Newton because Leibniz is smarter than Newton. I got one of my German friends like that, like our post on X about, the inventor of the calculus, Leibniz. He's like, oh, you're poking at Newton. I'm like, because I believe the Leibniz story based on what I've learned about Newton, right? That Newton's, of course, being
for 300 years later, people are still taking sides.
I'm taking Leibniz side. That Newton has mastered the mint by this point, and deviously involved in destroying all sorts of people that he finds threatening to his prestige, including Leibniz. They accuse Leibniz of stealing Newton's method of fluxions, and of course that's not the case. And apparently everybody has sort of quietly accepted that Leibniz did actually invent the calculus first, and we just sort of pretend that there wasn't this ridiculous fight.
So I'm seeing that Newton was going to destroy Pope, and for that reason Pope had to denounce his friend Bolingbroke.
Right, and then Pope that's how it's this nastiness, right? Nasty. In the midst of all of this, he writes this essay. So here's Pope again. I like his blue outfit, right? So he's in it. Well, we've learned in the course of our costume study that this kind of robe that they're wearing is
why does he look like Professor Quirrell?
But these turbans and these robes and stuff, it's like if you start looking at these paintings, they're all in these like dressing gowns, right? These were their fancy pajamas. Or their house robes, right? So here he is in his house robe. And here is his essay on man, which, as I said, now I understand what Hotchkiss was up to. She's trying to say, look, he really was friends with Bolingbroke. That's why you can tell at the opening of the essay, he addresses it to awake my St. John, leave all meaner things. That's Bolingbroke. It's Henry St. John, Lord Bolingbroke.
Oh, that's what he's talking to.
He's talking to...
This makes me a little bit sad, actually.
Why?
Because he obviously still respected him enough, even though he was being made to denounce him publicly.
He was made to denounce him publicly after he published this.
Okay. It still makes me sad.
It should make you sad. Because, it's like, talk about the viciousness of our culture war. Right now, this is exactly what's happening.
This is cancel culture.
This is totally cancel culture.
Only cancel culture gets you beheaded back then. So it was a little bit worse than today.
Some of the people that have gone so far as to take their lives, I think, but the problem is, and this is sort of the essay on man, how optimistic can we be? The kind of cancel culture they have is conducted through these the print runs of things, right? And and if something you'll print this thing, particularly in London, right? Bridgerton is set 100 years later, but it fits right in when we did some episodes on that, right? When Miss
Richardson?
Miss Whisper, yes, we did back in the Barbie days.
Did we? Oh, okay. That was with you and Kilts. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. It's going way back.
Whatever I haven't watched it in a while. So the character who's writing the newsletter, and she writes her gossip page and she sends it out, and everybody who counts, right? Society is all. That's the kind of world that the Essay on Man is published into 100 years earlier, and it's that kind of it has to be, but it has to be focused on the salon and the coffee houses and these cities and the distribution. They don't have the railroads yet, so the distribution is still going to be dependent on the carriages and that kind of and the print runs are going to be dependent on access to paper. They're starting to, I mean, this is Harold Innis did a lot of work on the Canadian pulp paper, the effect of the pulp paper as a staple, but that's really, that really kicks off when you get the railroads and you can distribute newspapers widely and such. But it's the media effect of this kind of print world that chatters at everybody. And so Pope is going to publish this, dedicate it to his friend, and then, as you were reading, get embarrassed by the whole Newton thing, and then say, "Oh no, Bolingbroke's an idiot. I never wrote that."
Yeah.
Gnarly Bird saying, like Thomas Nash, pamphleteer. Yeah, Thomas Nash is 100 years before that. So yes, these
100 years before or after? I'm talking about Thomas Paine.
Okay, if she's thinking, Gnarly Bird is usually reading McLuhan, and McLuhan's dissertation was on 16th century.
That'd be, yeah.
Okay, look it up. Everybody look it up. Who did McLuhan write his dissertation on?
Nash was a cartoonist, political cartoonist.
Okay, maybe I'm confusing my Nashes. Okay. So getting a sense of how vicious and petty. I mean, we talked last time about Pope's not affair with Lady Mary. Funnily enough, her daughter is going to marry the guy who I think is the one who destroys some of these guys. It's all so nasty. Game of Thrones is nothing on real life. In terms of the cell, and it's like it's a few thousand people doing this to each other. I mean, there's more people than that in England, but it's a small set of educated elite, right?
Elite, yeah. Everyone's betters, yeah.
The betters, right? And they're being nasty to each other in all these ways. So Pope publishes the essay, and then it also gets, and I got some publication figures. These are the things that the AI is really useful for helping you find out. So the Essay on Man, it's super popular in the 18th century. It's like over 100 editions in its first century. So the first century of it, it's like an edition a year, right? That's amazing for something like that in the 18th century. And it's nearly that many in the colonies. From 1786 to 1799, there were 28 editions, so 2 a year. From 1800 to 1819, there were 56. This is a text. Okay, so we just found it, right? Hotchkiss, thank you, right? This is what they all were reading. And I did start asking, is it Milton? It's Milton, Pope, and Shakespeare. And I'm like, is it really Milton? Milton is, I think, the highbrow version of everything. This is the middlebrow version. The Puritans also loved Milton because he was Puritan, but I think more people read Pope, most likely, whether they're, the literary sort that start meditating on satanic, political meditations. We're going to read some of this, start tonight, finally. And you're going to realize this is the kind of thing that sticks in everybody's head. What Pope wrote is the stuff that I think the man on the street would have read, because they're selling this little book, and all of the booksellers keep printing them because they keep selling, right? Selling out. This is your Dan Brown of the day, right? This is what you're going to be able to sell at the airport. or the seaport or in your local bookstore, right? It's like they keep selling them, so they keep printing them, and it well into the 19th century. I found an article that's talking about how there are people that disagree with Pope, but the funny thing is, and when they disagree with them, the examples that this it's a paper from 1952 found where people are disagreeing with Pope. They're doing it in his poetic style, right? So they're writing in heroic couplets to disagree with Pope. So it's like he's deep in the bones of everybody in the colony.
He was living rent free in everyone's head.
That, right? And I'm just saying, I'm not living rent free in my own head. I'm at the end of the week, after spending the week reading first about the expulsion of usurers in medieval Europe and the Black Sea slave trade between Venice, Genoa, and Cairo. So you see, the 17th and 18th centuries is my evening job. Okay, this is all of these things. So let me just highlight the problems, right? The big question of where the actual like animating philosophy of the founders' documents comes from. What is it that they're all, like they say out loud they're just going to believe, without necessarily thinking why they believe it. And that it's not even faith, right? There's something else of, it's the sort of phrases that you just, when people get in fights, they just say, but, to err is human, to forgive divine, right?
Right.
And they start yelling at each other. And you're like, why do you know that?
Why do we still know that?
Good question. Because it scans. And
because it's true. Everybody knows it.
To err is human, to forgive divine. Why do you know that's true? I mean,
well, because it is.
Because it is. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that problem, how the sense of community changed in the 7 Years' War, where the political conversation is going in England, and the philosophical effects, and then we got to the cancel culture around Newton and oh my gosh, right? It was Lady Whistledown. That's good. Yeah, and Gnarly Bird says she's talking about McLuhan's Nash. Okay. So we have this essay. You can buy it. It's something Washington definitely read. We were going to watch that movie. It's something we know Thomas Jefferson read. Everybody read it. Everybody read this essay. Man, Abigail Adams quotes it in letters to her husband. Let's see. I got a list.
And her children.
Which
means that multiple generations were reading this and repeating it.
Right. Alexander Hamilton cites Pope, the Pennsylvania Chief Justice Thomas McKean, and of course Thomas Jefferson. So it's like, if you look up on the internet, the Pope is quoted more by the Founding Fathers than anybody else, right? Although sometimes they just call him the poet. And that I think is interesting too, because they get this essay. It's quite plain, right? I like this, I think when it's originally published, they just publish it anonymously, although later it gets a good reception. So Pope puts his name on it and then he gets in a fight. Okay. Anyway, that they sort of, you'll read it and you won't really read it as by anybody. I think, I mean, it's Pope, but it has this authority because it's the thing everybody's reading.
So they called him the poet the way they called Shakespeare the bard, right? So it was kind of a nickname.
Yes, the poet, the bard. Right. I don't know what they call Milton.
The Puritan.
The Puritan. Well, okay. So what I'm showing right now is so Bolingbroke had his own newsletter magazine called The Craftsman. I am mainly intrigued by the title. Like, why was it The Craftsman? I don't know what that means, and I want to find out. So that's a question mark. Anyway, okay. So, have we now made you like dying for us to read some of the essay? We hope. Right. So McLuhan wrote the Classical Tribune in the place of Thomas Nash in the learning of his time. Nash is Elizabethan.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're thinking of somebody else. There's an artist that shares a similar name.
I was thinking of somebody else. And when I think of McLuhan, I think of visual things mostly because that's mostly what we've spoken about. So but okay.
Right. Okay.
Completely different one.
So, why does this poem work so well? Well, the amount of throat clearing I'm doing tonight, it's hilarious. This is living in my head, right? In my head, you make a statement and 18 layers of attribution and support and tracking everything down.
You will have to be deprogrammed at some point.
It's not going to happen. It's too much fun. Why would I not do this? The rabbit holes never disappoint.
Oh, it's funny.
Here we go. Right. Okay. So what the thing is, I am actually happy because I do think we have found it's bedrock, right? This is the archaeological bedrock of many of our American senses of it's just plain true. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So happily enough, we find out that Pope meant this to happen. So he said there's a preface to it. You can we'll link it to the Gutenberg so you guys can read it. So this that he's saying he wants to write something about moral duty, right? But he's concerned to do it in a way that you can actually sort of navigate between the extremes of making some clear points but not saying too much, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what he wants to accomplish in this little booklet is a short yet not imperfect system of ethics. So he's saying temperate yet not inconsistent, a short and not imperfect system of ethics. So we're aiming at ethics in this essay ultimately. And his goal is, and you can see that this is pre-Kant, right? So if you want to understand why Americans think the way we do, you need to read this little bitty 35-page essay, not Kant, because and that is actually what Pope wanted to achieve in this. And he's been talking to Bolingbroke, and so we're going to figure out.
And I want to interject here. Sure. It is very easy to read. It is super easy to read this because of the way he wrote it in heroic couplets.
And he explains why he did that, which I shall now read. This is not in heroic couplets. Okay. So he's going to make this system of ethics. This I might have done in prose, but I chose verse and even rhyme for two reasons. Now, one that he doesn't say is I write poetry. So this is where I'm comfortable. But he does actually give, I think, a very interesting justification for writing this system of ethics in verse. The one will appear obvious, that principles, maxims, or precepts so written both strike the reader more strongly at first and are more easily retained by him afterwards. Bingo, right? He wrote it in exactly the rhetorical and literary form that is going to stick in your head.
And 3 centuries later, it still does. The man's a genius.
To err is human, to forgive divine, which is not from the Essay on Man. It's the Essay on Criticism. But anyway, so he purposely does this because he thinks it's going to stick in your head. And we've been reading it, and you're saying, yes, I recognize all of these things that I just think are true. I have this. You should have the same experience. For example, reading Proverbs in the Bible. Even if you've never sat down and read the book from cover to cover or page to page, right? You will know most of them and there's no like system in Proverbs that I'm aware of, right? There's some really wonderful passages like of wisdom speaking and things like that. But for the most part, it's all these sayings. And because people in our tradition have been reading Proverbs for ages as wisdom for how to live, people quote it at each other all the time. So you've heard them. And they'll be there in your head just always. So he's right that you want something that becomes proverbial, and Proverbs it's all attributed to Solomon, the king. Pope's stuff, it just lives, right? Most of the things that circulate as his, I probably wouldn't recognize as his. I mean, if it's in iambic pentameter, I'd probably suspect that now, but so is a lot of Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other may seem odd, but it is true. And this you and I were talking about. This is quite fun. I found I could express them more shortly this way than in prose itself. And nothing is more certain than much of the force as well as the grace of arguments or instructions depends on their conciseness.
Like the preamble.
I like the preamble. But I mean, we found this in writing our own poems, that there's things you can say in poetry that you cannot say in prose because it would take too long.
Yes. It would take too long, and you would go down too many rabbit holes. You would send people in too many different directions.
You'd write 800
lose
page
focus.
books. Right. Yes. Yeah. But weirdly enough, because of the way rhyme and meter and the structures work, it's there in this like deep encapsulated form. It's concise, it's memorable, and it's sayable in a way that books and books and books of exegesis can't achieve. He says, I was unable, and Kant, goes on to write unreadable books of ethical philosophy, and Pope, everybody memorized. I was unable to treat this part of my subject more in detail without becoming dry and tedious, or more poetically without sacrificing perspicuity to ornament, without wandering from the precision or breaking the chain of reasoning. If any man can unite all these without diminution of any of them, I freely confess he will compass a thing above my capacity. Go ahead and try.
Oh, humble brag.
He's great, yes. Yeah, sure, you try it. It's like it's harder than you think. So he says, what now is published is only to be considered as a general map of man, marking out no more than the greater parts, their extent, their limits, and their connection, but leaving the particular to be more fully delineated in the charts which are to follow, which apparently he never published. Consequently, these epistles in their progress, if I have health and leisure to make any progress, will be less dry and more susceptible of poetical ornament. I am here only opening the fountains and clearing the passage. To deduce the rivers, to follow them in their course, and to observe their effects may be a task more agreeable. Okay, he never did that second part. He just wrote these 4 letters, and it's like it's meant to be an outline. It's meant to be an encapsulation of the whole philosophy, but written in a way that will stick. Okay. You're nodding. Okay.
I'm nodding.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is way bigger preamble than I thought. The preamble of the Constitution was way shorter. We saying that. Okay. So my thought about for the last part of tonight's is to talk about Epistle 1, but just to give you guys an overview. In Epistle 1, the argument is of the nature and state of man with respect to the universe. So we're going to do everything, right? Epistle 2 is of the nature and state of man with respect to himself as an individual. So then we'll do that one next week. We'll at least we'll see how far we get. It's what are we as individual persons? And then the next one is of the nature and state of man with respect to society. And the final one, of the nature and state of man with respect to happiness. Oh my gosh! We are going to pursue happiness. All right.
We found it.
We found it. And the other thing to know before I finally let us read is most of this is what Bolingbroke told Pope that he learned from the Leibnizians in Paris. So it's Leibniz. But through this kind of chain of I'm not sure that Pope ever read Leibniz directly. I think he learned this from Bolingbroke. Which means it's this sort of distilled version of. I mean, I need to read Leibniz now. Clearly. Oh, right. The funny thing is of all of this, like these are the Hanoverian kings. Leibniz is in Hanover. It's part of Sophie's household, and yet there's the Newtonians versus the Leibnizians are like, daggers drawn, or would be if they're at pamphlets drawn. Suppose destroying each other's reputation.
He wrote it to Bolingbroke, so he wouldn't have learned it from him.
He did learn from him. He's not teaching Bolingbroke. He's the things that I learned in talking with you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
okay.
He's like synthesizing what he got from Bolingbroke.
Gotcha.
according to Hotchkiss, right? Because I don't think Pope was reading Leibniz on his own. I don't think that's what this is. I think this is a student version of the general gist of what Bolingbroke picked up in Paris. So having built this up and made everybody realize how super duper important it is, shall we just read it?
Sure.
In little steps. Okay. Well, you said you liked it, so read the opening.
Of Epistle 1?
Yeah, Epistle 1.
Okay.
Through 10. Line 16, before the first Roman numeral.
Okay. Awake, my St. John, leave all meaner things to low ambition and the pride of kings. Let us, since life can little more supply than just to look about us and to die, expatiate free o'er all this scene of man, a mighty maze, but not without a plan. A wild where weeds and flowers promiscuous shoot, or garden tempting with forbidden fruit. Together let us beat this ample field, try what the open, what the covert yield. The Latin tracks, the giddy heights explore, of all who blindly creep or sightless soar. Eye nature's walks, shoot folly as it flies, and catch the manners living as they rise. Laugh where we must, be candid where we can, but vindicate the ways of God to man.
Okay. Anything happen in that opening? Startles.
Now I have to understand what I just read.
You said it was easy and fun to read.
No, it was. It's very easy and fun to read, but I was more concerned about how I started.
Okay,
so
very good.
It's man's place in the universe, and he's in. It's kind of like an introduction. We're going to take a walk through nature here rhetorically. Nice. Is what he's saying.
Yep. Why?
Yeah. And so why? Because it's man's place in the universe.
Yep.
So he's going to be discussing the natural world and man's place in it.
Okay. Did that last line do anything to you?
Vindicate the ways of God to man. Try to explain God's ways to man. Mm-hmm. That's what he's going to try to do.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, he's going to fail and he's going to tell you not to try. But
oh, really?
But it's worth discussing. Is his point. Yeah.
Okay. But that line of itself, does that line sound familiar to you?
Vindicate the ways of God to man.
Yeah.
Life where we must, be candid where we can. No. to be honest, no. I wish it did. You're probably going to remind me, and I'm going to go, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
As I just want to point out, as I was reading this Epistle 1, I thought it reminded me of Job a bit. I will say that.
Yes. There's a lot. I mean, so this is a new text to me, and I don't know. I know that there's a Leibnizian flavor to it that is important, but the exact sort of sources that draws, it really feels like Job. The vindicate the ways of God to man. I ended up saying, wait a minute, who said that? Because I know that phrase. I know that that's what Milton does.
Oh.
but the whole point of Paradise Lost is to justify the ways of God to man, and Pope is vindicate.
Vindicating.
Which is
an answer.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. It's an answer to Milton.
Yeah.
So, and
that makes sense though, because that's why I was hearing Job, because the way he's just, as I read all of it. So the way he's describing this it sounded like God speaking to Job saying, well, where were you when I created the universe? who do you think you are? Right. So he's telling you who you are. Your place of man's place in the universe. Let's discuss it.
Yes. And I do think there's a little bit, like that of doing the thumbing the nose at Milton, because
that's wrong. And that's very popish.
It's totally popish. Like, did he just insult you? I'm not sure. Can you tell? Right? Pope would have been tweeting at everybody if he had the chance.
That's
right.
Hilarious.
He would totally. And so this is his tweet at Milton going, okay, look, you missed. I can do it better. Or as he said, it's like, if you think you can do better, go ahead, try, right? But he is going to do better than Milton at helping you understand your relationship to God, man's relationship to God. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, I'll read the next part.
Mm-hmm.
Say first, of God above or man below, what can we reason but from what we know? Of man, what you did better than I did. Of man, what see we but his station here, from which to reason or to which refer? Through worlds unnumbered, though the God be known, 'tis ours to trace him only in our own. He who through vast immensity can pierce, see worlds on worlds compose one universe. Observe how system into system runs, what other planets circle other suns, what varied beings peoples every star, may tell why heaven has made us as we are. But of this frame, the bearings and the ties, the strong connections, nice dependencies, gradations just has thy pervading soul looked through, or can a part contain the whole? Is the great chain that draws all to agree and drawn supports upheld by God or thee? Okie dokie, that just blew our mind. Okay, so clearly the chain that he's thinking of is the great chain of being, popular in diagrams like this since the 16th century. However, did you notice what he did? I mean, he's talking about aliens, isn't he?
Right. What other suns? What other planets circle other suns? Yeah.
Right.
You can't possibly know.
So guess what, guys? This whole thing about, oh, look, if we end up with aliens and find out there's life on other planets, it's going to destroy our entire conception of the universe and our place in it. Pope would go, oh, really?
Religion.
Make us question our religion, right? And it's like Pope would go, yeah, been there, done that. Sorry, guys. He's pre-tweeted.
Yeah.
This is like precognition in Minority Report. Like, this is Pope pre-tweeting the alien discoveries, right? Through worlds unnumbered, though the God be known. Through worlds unnumbered, through the God be known. 'Tis ours to trace him only in our own. So we know we're in this world. Maybe there's others. We don't know, right? We're here looking at him through this one. He through vast immensity can pierce, see worlds on worlds compose one universe. Okie dokie. I mean, I think he's literally. I mean, this seems to me to be what he's saying, that there could be lots of other worlds with people on them, and it's still one universe, right? It's still one creation.
So he's. This is philosophy meets science. This discussion here,
right?
So yes, I can hear the discussions he's had. That makes sense.
It feels, I mean, you can feel it. It's like the Solon discussion. Yeah. It's like, what if? Right? And if you look at all these different systems and other planets and varied peoples, this may tell us why heaven made us as we are. But, I think he's saying we can look at our part of it and understand the whole.
Yeah.
Is the great chain that draws all to agree and drawn supports upheld by God or thee? Is it God who upholds the universe or you, man?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next part's, go ahead and read 2. It's a longer. Okay. Do you want to keep reading the whole part?
Well, let's see here. I can try.
Yeah.
Oh, just that.
Well, it's
stop it respectively. Okay, no, I see.
At,
3.
At 3. Yeah.
Okay. Let me just stop the noise here. All right. Presumptuous man, the reason wouldst thou find why form so weak, so little, and so blind? First, if thou canst, the harder reason guess, why formed no weaker, blinder, and no less? Ask of thy mother earth why oaks are made, taller or stronger than the weeds they shade. Or ask of yonder argent fields above why Jove's satellites are less than Jove. Of systems possible, if 'tis confessed that wisdom infinite must form the best, where all must full or not coherent be, and all that rises, rise in due degree, then in the scale of reasoning life 'tis plain there must be somewhere such a rank as man. And all this question wrangle ere so long is only this, if God has placed him wrong. Respecting man, whatever wrong we call, must be right, as relative to all. In human works, though labored on with pain, 1,000 movements scarce one purpose gain. In God's one single can its end produce, yet serves to second to some other use. So man, who here seems principal alone, perhaps acts second to some sphere unknown, touches some wheel or verges to some goal. 'Tis but a part we see and not a whole. When the proud steed shall know why man restrains his fiery course or drives him o'er the plains, when the dull ox, why now he breaks the clod, is now a victim and now Egypt's god, then shall man's pride and dullness comprehend his actions, passions, being's use and end. Why doing, suffering, checked, impelled, and why, this hour a slave, the next a deity? Then say not man's imperfect, heaven in fault. Say rather, man's as perfect as he ought. His knowledge measured to his state and place, his time a moment, and appoint his space. If to be perfect in a certain sphere, what matter soon or late, or here or there? The blessed today is as completely so as who began 1,000 years ago.
Very nice. Mind blown.
It is. It is nice. And as I was reading, I was thinking of Horton Hears a Who. I don't know.
And you should be. Yes. Yes. Good. Yes. Why? The Pope of the Dr. Seuss of the 18th century.
Perhaps as second to some sphere unknown, touches some wheel or verges to some goal. 'Tis but a part we see and not a whole. Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, you can't see everything. And you can't see what you're affecting.
Right. But he's meditating on where we fit in the whole system. Right. So here, this is Robert Flood's famous, we use this a lot in our meditations on what we were writing for Draco Chemicus at the outset. Right. Here's the soul of the world, this anima mundi, chained to God and to earth. Right. She's holding this, she's bound by God, but also chaining nature and the spheres and the elements and the celestial spheres and such. And he's saying, where are you? Look where you are in this whole scheme of creatures, right? And are you, should you be weaker? Should you be stronger? Which is it, right? Taller or strong? Ask of thy mother earth why oaks are made taller or stronger than the weeds they shade. Why are trees big and weeds small?
And it is one more important than the other.
Right. Why are Jupiter's, speaking of Jove's satellites, I mean, Jupiter's moons, right? So he has to do the Galileo thing right here. Like Jupiter has moons. Why are Jupiter's moons small and it's big? Where do you fit in this? And I think it's also it is a meditation that they're having, which we played with a lot in Act 4, between the microscopic and the distant, right?
Yes.
The telescope, things that you could see,
the microscope,
right. and the telescope. And here we are as human beings, where we are. We're simply where we are between. Well, we feel like we're between. And wouldn't God in his wisdom make the best system?
Yes, that is his entire point here in this epistle one. Yeah.
Right. And that is apparently what the main thing he gets from the Leibnizian understanding, that it's the best system. Scientists love making this argument now. It's like, all of the ways in which the constants of the physical system are such that it's only this one that could exist.
Exactly. Right. This is why you have so many conversions among former atheists who are in the sciences, specifically in physics, right? In astronomy, they're looking at this going, yeah, that doesn't happen by accident. That's impossible.
Right. It's too perfect. All these parts fit together too well for it to be an accident of nothing. Yeah. Yeah. Or just randomness.
Yeah. So if you were to look at the structure of the universe, which is what some scientists try to do, occasionally you might see something like a chain and go, that didn't assemble itself any more than a snowman did.
Right.
Right. From random snowflakes. That doesn't happen.
Well, and consider, and so I do want to learn more about Leibniz now, right? Leibniz is the one who's inventing the calculus, but also systematizing all sorts of layers of knowledge, and yet doing it with. So Newton is busy with his alchemy by this point, either his currency speculations with the Bank of England or literally alchemy, right? His chemical experiments. And also Newton is very caught up at this point in his apocalyptic predictions, which I think when people found that in the 20th century in his notebooks, they were a little shocked and horrified, because isn't Newton our hero of the physical system, and no mystical stuff in there?
But what about the science, right? Yeah, I can hear the lamentations.
Oh, the lamentations
of the science community.
But what I'm gathering from learning about Leibniz through Pope and Bolingbroke is that Leibniz was actually much more integrated. Funny that he invents the calculus, where you do nothing but draw integrals, but there you go. That he
nice.
His metaphysics were of a piece with his physics, and so he was actually trying to think, okay, so if we can see this world system, physical system, with all of its properties and creatures and plants and animals and so forth, why is it here? And the usual English empirical premise is don't ask, right? You just don't ask why, right? You just study the mechanisms. And Leibniz wanted to ask the why, which is obviously why I find him more appealing.
I can appreciate that. Yes.
And that I think if Americans, so one of the things that is so like perverse to the rest of the world, even the people that came to celebrate the World Cup here, were struck by how cheerful Americans are, and it's like this weird way that we have of just being cheerful about stuff, and nobody can explain it. We really are, right?
That's an interesting observation. Yeah,
I've traveled enough to know this is true, right? You get home and you're just happy. I've been in Europe a lot. I'm sorry for Bahrain right now. I hope that people stop bombing them soon. But I've mainly traveled in Europe, and I love Europe. I spend a lot of my life thinking about it. But it's gloomy in a way that America simply isn't. Like, we are the corgi puppies of the world, as far as I can tell, that we just seem to be happy all the time. And people will talk about it saying, oh, well, it's, our entrepreneurialism, or our, you come here and anything can happen. But this is what the founding documents were written off of, this not pursuit of happiness, but just within the context of this optimism of what we live in.
Yes. Yeah, I think optimism is an attribute that is very typically American.
And here it is. Is this not where it came from, right? It's like, this isn't just a system of government. We're going to get to that. Pope does get to the systems of government. We're probably not going to get there tonight. Definitely not tonight. But he starting from our place in the universe, starting from this feeling of systems possible, if 'tis confessed, that wisdom infinite must form the best, where all must full or not coherent be, and all that rises rise in due degree, then in the scale of reasoning life 'tis plain there must be somewhere such a rank as man. And all the question wrangle e'er so long is only this, if God has placed him wrong. Could it be that in all of this wonderful system, man is the only one out of place? And Pope was like, that doesn't seem likely. No, that doesn't seem likely. And so and then this being the big problem that Leibnizian optimism gives, which in the critiques of Pope they come up with, it's like, that's stupid. How can you claim this? But this is the challenge, right? It's the challenge of saying, respecting man, whatever wrong we call, must be right as relative to all. That we might find ourselves, it's interesting that Pope, whom we've established was trod on by a cow when he was a child, and had a broken spine and all sorts of things, and Lady Mary laughed at him. To even write this at all is kind of putting his heart where his mind is, right? This is somehow still the best. Somehow
he has skin in the game when it comes to this argument.
He really does. It's like it's socially, bitter satirist at some points, and then other ways able to write this and say, no, Job, you weren't there when I created all of this. It's right.
Yeah.
And then, I like the last one, with, when the animals know why they have these different roles in the place, we'll know ours. It's like, we can see that sometimes the ox is a victim and sometimes a god.
Right.
That we're sometimes a slave and the next a deity, which is topical for me reading all about medieval slavery. That then say not man's imperfect, heaven in fault. So it's not heaven's fault that we find ourselves in these difficulties. Say rather man's as perfect as he ought. His knowledge measured to his state and place, his time a moment, and a point his space. We talked about this last summer, when we were talking about how Newton invents absolute space in order to fiddle his equations. Mm-hmm. And Leibniz called him on it. So, good for him. Right. I think, whatever like understanding of here that the sort of relativity of our, we are in relation to the creature, and if it be perfect in a certain sphere, what matters sooner, late, or here or there, that the sort of, there's not an absolute space and there's not absolute time. It's within this fullness. Mm-hmm. The blessed today is as completely so as who began 1,000 years ago. That we're a part of the whole thing in both time and space. And this whole story is part of it, and the whole creation is part of it.
It's reiterating we have a place, and we have everything we need to thrive in this place we've been put.
Right. So it's as Gnarly Bird is saying, Psalms 139:14. I will praise thee, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and my soul knoweth right well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
So it's wonderful. It's like it's such a theological vision of science.
It is. Yes. Yeah, they're not at odds. They're not at odds, which people are just starting to say out loud now, in at least in the Western world. But it was said a long time ago by Pope, right here.
Right. Well, and absorbed and memorized by the American readers who were quoting him. And so when Jefferson says stuff about nature and nature's God, right?
Yes.
Laws of nature and of nature's God. This is what he means, not Newtonian mechanics. And I do think that is even more important than I am like shivering at the thought that it is. It's that somehow our vision, our mythology, our reality, our metaphysical truth is bigger than billiard balls, right? Cause and reaction and mechanics, and somehow America has always participated in this optimism. It's like we're participating in this, like the hymns that we actually sing are to our land, right? Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesty. But I'm not trying to sing it. The thing that I think of the most when I think of the grandeur of America is obviously our landscape.
Yeah,
I mean, our cities are pretty amazing. Definitely, Chicago is a pretty amazing city, but our landscape is you guys, if you haven't done the driving trip yet, got to do it. Drive west.
It's soul changing, really is.
Yeah,
it is when you drive across these huge empty spaces, but it's not dead space. It's a beautiful sky, and it's animal life and plant life, and it just goes on forever, for as far as the eye can see. Just like when probably the first people saw it 30,000, 40,000 years ago. It still looks like that in a lot of places.
And the Americans just like irritatingly kept doing that, going west.
Irritatingly.
Well, to the Indians,
it's
we were
still empty in the middle.
Well,
right? relatively speaking, it's all, our populations are on the coasts.
They still are, yes, and and I mean they're along the rivers and you know anyway that feeling. What's interesting about it is saying we're founded as a government, right? It's like it's literally a government. And we will get to why Pope thinks that's so important. But the first place that it is, it's in nature, and this nature and nature's God. I think they're, you know,
yeah, nature was not kind to him, and he had never seen this big, beautiful, clean, open spaces of America.
This is true.
He saw a lot of London, which was pretty dirty at the time he was living there.
That's true.
So it's real interesting that he was still able to see this, and it was attacked by a cow, as you just mentioned.
Stepped on by a cow.
Yeah. So nature was not kind to him, but he still recognized its magnificence and his place in it, and its place in God's plan and his design.
Right. Okay, let's read one more section, and then I think we're out of time. Heaven from all creatures hides the book of fate, all but the page prescribed their present state. From brutes what men, from men what spirits know, or who could suffer being here below. The lamb thy riot dooms to bleed today, had he thy reason, would he skip and play? Pleased to the last, he crops the flowery food and licks the hand just raised to shed his blood. O blindness to the future kindly given, that each may fill the circle marked by heaven, who sees with equal eye as God of all, a hero perish or a sparrow fall, atoms or systems into ruin hurled, and now a bubble burst, and now a world. Hope humbly then, with trembling pinions soar, wait the great teacher death, and God adore. What future bliss he gives not thee to know, but gives that hope to be thy blessing now. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. Man never is, but always to be blessed. The soul uneasy and confined from home rests and expatiates in a life to come. Lo, the poor Indian, whose untutored mind see gods in clouds or hears him in the wind. His soul proud science never taught to stray far as the solar walk or Milky Way. Yet simple nature to his hope has given, behind the cloud-topped world an humbler heaven, some safer world in depth of woods embraced, some happier island in the watery waste, where slaves once more their native land behold, no fiends torment, no Christians thirst for gold. To be contents his natural desire, he asks no angel's wing, nor seraph's fire, but thinks admitted to that equal sky, his faithful dog shall bear him company. Woo! That one hit.
I know that was a hard one. I know.
I mean, talk about content. Okay, so he's basically saying, you know, like, it's a good thing we don't know what's coming. All of you who want all the time to know what is going to happen in the future, right? We talk about this all the time in the Mosaic Arc and in the Dragon Common Room writing. It's like the desire to tell the future. Are you sure? Are you really sure? You want to know the future. You say the lamb, would the lamb play if he knew that you're about to slit his throat? It's interesting sort of saying we don't know when we're going to die, and that's a blessing. This is very, I'm wondering how much Tolkien read Pope. I know he had him in his library. And he had both an essay, a man, and a collection. So and I also feel like Pope's Mythopoeia, it's in heroic couplets like this, and it feels very Popian as we're reading Pope, that there's ways in which Tolkien's
Mythopoeia.
It feels to me like he's echoing a lot of this here, and the blindness to the future kindly given, that each may fill the circle marked by heaven, that we don't know what's coming is in fact a gift, that we're not just living in horror of all of the things that could happen. And, we're given hope. We don't know what the future is going to bring, but we are given hope that there is something. So the what future bliss he gives not thee to know, but gives that hope to be thy blessing now. So the blessing of the future life and the future blessing is our the thought of it, right? That we have that thought is a blessing that we can carry with us into heaven. And what's interesting with the Indian who knows that he's going to have his dog in heaven. Oh my gosh. That, the Indian, he doesn't know all of this fancy theology that we have, but he can imagine, and talk about this, right? This is written in 1743. This is before the French and Indian War. But he can imagine some safer world in the woods, an island somewhere where they're not slaves, no fiends, and the Christians aren't there stealing all their gold. I think that's a dig at the Spanish.
Yes, of course it should have been dig at the English too, since they had no problem stealing what the Spanish stole.
Right. The footnotes in this edition, I'm going to say, are not that great.
Is this the Gutenberg one?
No, this is the Penguin Classics.
Oh, you're reading it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
And I always think, oh, maybe there's a note, and there's never anything useful in the notes. Indian in the Americas. Oh, thank you. Seraph's fire. The angelic seraphim were associated with fire. I knew that. So,
did Indians use the American Indian? Did they use hunting dogs? I've never actually heard that.
But thinks admitted to that equal sky, his faithful dog shall bear him company. Don't know. No,
Maybe he's just assuming that. Maybe he's idealizing them a bit.
It's possible. He knows.
Either way,
the Europeans
it's a cool
use the
idea.
Hunting, yes, that they're going to have their hunting dogs.
Yeah,
in heaven.
I want to see all my previous dogs in heaven.
Well, even that hope is, given to us, which is, yes, I hope for my dog. John Abrisi saying the only difference between the USA and Australia is the watered inland. The big rivers in the continental divide made all the difference. Otherwise, Australia would have had a similar population. I think he's answering something that, we were talking about population?
We were talking about population and the fact that the center of America is empty, kind of like Australia. I guess it's mostly on the coast. We have a lot of people in the center of the country, but it's broken up by huge mountain ranges as well, and lots of plains. And yeah, most of the populations are still on the coasts here.
Yeah.
So I think Australia is just a more extreme version of that because of its heat and dryness in the middle.
Right. Well, and this is the other thing that I know, the 7 Years' War book. It's Fred Anderson, Crucible of War. Got to read it. It also makes clear why we end up with this tradition of begging for people to come here, because there's not enough people for the kinds of communities.
Well, there's not enough people.
The colonists. There's not enough
people to expand.
Right.
They wanted people to do that.
And they were very, there's efforts. Again, it's the image of mankind and of why we're here. I mean, it is amazingly optimistic, and we could once we get through the ethics of it, saying exactly whose ethics is this, because he's assuming all sorts of things about how people are going to behave, with making it seem as if it's a philosophical system, but it is actually obviously a theological system as well. But that they're not making strong what we would recognize from the 19th century's nationalist claims in any of this. It's why the American founding documents talk so generically about man and nature and government.
And it also explains why this individualism characterizes Americans too, because what they did with these documents was talk about man and his relationship to God,
right,
and government and nature, but it was individual, and it could be applied to every individual. So
yes.
It just kind of applied outwards.
Right. And it's nothing to do with John Stuart Mill and his on the individual. That's later. You're exactly right. Our American individualism fits much better in this description than so all of these 19th century developments, which are very much in Europe, not ours, right? John Stuart Mill is in London. The sort of the United States does not have the same kind of nationalist project as the European countries do. It's not like Germany or Italy. We end up with refugees from those projects because people come from Germany in the 1840s. They come from Italy for, varieties of reasons. They come from Ireland because the English starved them. So all of the people that came to America came into a context in which, for the founding, first century, 1750 to 1850, people have been reading Pope. It's their school text. It's the thing that they all have to memorize. So, one of the phrases was in the part that I just read, hope springs eternal in the human breast, right? And everybody's going to quote that, right? It's like, but that's true.
Say it all the time, usually sarcastically, but I still use it.
Right. And the Pope, what he wanted to do was, I copied out a few more of them. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. That again, not all of these are from the essay, but they're Pope.
Yeah.
Hope springs eternal in the human breast is the essay. The proper study of mankind is man. We're going to get to that. An honest man's the noblest work of God. Again, that's in the essay. And they get stuck in people. I mean, I'm sure people were given these to memorize in school. And then from the reception that I studied today a bit, there's guys in the late 18th, early 19th century who are, rewriting Pope to, make his claim better about the philosophy and such, but they're doing it in a heroic couplet. So this is what got embedded in everybody's imagination. I'm very, very convinced. And this, it's a simpler and more straightforward, pedagogically than all sorts of other things that I've thought and wondered. It's like, oh, it's the Scots-Irish Enlightenment philosophy coming through Princeton. Okay, yes. And there's definitely elements of that, but that's not the kind of thing that, your ordinary person just quotes at you.
Yeah. Yeah. And by design, as Pope himself pointed out in his introduction to this, is because I want people to remember it and I want it to be simple.
Right. And it's as simple as the kind of things that, like with our claim, the immigration gets solidified in the imagination in the way that it does because of the sonnet that gets put on the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
This is before that, and this is even deeper in people's convictions, including in our Declaration of Independence. So that language of, rights and nature and pursuit of happiness and stuff, it needs a place to inhabit in the intention of the founders. And to know that, you need to know what they were reading, and they're reading Pope. I hope that's enough of a demonstration to make people want to come back and hear more, because we're going to do more next week.
I hope it makes people want to read him, because he's really, really fun to read.
I think he's fun. I mean, I do recognize when we started reading him back in 2020, during COVID, when we were not getting to be out in nature in the way that we ought to have been. I mean, I was going out with my dog. No, my dog died that year. I've had a lot of dog deaths.
Oh, I know. You really have.
Stop it. When we started reading the Dunciad, it was actually hard. I remember with the group, there was, 10 or so people, and we get together and try
But it was so hard because of all of the specific cultural references that he was using, because he was mocking, he was satirizing real people.
That's true.
And so you had to figure, okay, who was it? Why was he satirizing them? What exactly were they doing? I'm still learning more new things about the Dunciad.
Yeah.
I learned last week. That's why that one's difficult. This is completely different. He did another one that it was one of my favorite, called The Rape of the Lock, which is about, and anybody who's ever even heard of influencers or team parties, Hollywood parties or anything, you will recognize that when you're reading this, because nothing has changed. Rich people parties are still the same as they were in his time.
It's true.
And
it's true.
And that's what that poem's about. It's hilarious. And there was a song in the early 70s called Ballroom Blitz. It must have been inspired by that poem. It must have been. But yeah, that's another fun one to read.
And there's another Popian phrase that I'm in mind. The eternal sunshine of the restless mind. It was a movie.
Of the spotless mind?
Spotless mind. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind. That's from his letter Velois to Abelard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
It's a heartbreaking phrase too, and it's a heartbreaking movie to watch. It's a hard movie to watch,
it's
I
a hard
thought.
movie to watch. But
Yeah.
what's interesting about these is these Popian lines will float around by themselves and collect. It's like they are like tweets, right? That they'll collect stuff that
Yes.
may or may not have anything
Yeah.
to do with what he was saying to start with, but because of the precision that, like as he said, the conciseness and the precision of the verse, they're out there, and they're talking about memes, right? He's a meme lord.
Yes.
He's
He is the meme
he's
lord, the original meme
he's the
lord.
meme lord of America. Meme lord of
Yeah.
America. Alexander Pope.
Check him out.
Check him out. Okay, well, we'll come back next week and we'll read some more of the essay on man, and we'll get to the government part. I think we made our point with the nature part and the system. Although he keeps in the first part. Let me see if I can summarize it. The thing is, he's hard to summarize because as we've proved just by reading the first part, you have to you do have to read it slowly. It does help to read it out loud. But he's doing these little kernels of idea, and you have to sort of it's good antidote to scrolling, because you just have to slow down and really unlock it a bit, and then you realize that he's saying more than you thought in each
Yeah,
each
you
of
can
the
read it over and
phrases.
over again and learn more things.
Right.
And you can read it through the first time. And I could tell this when I was reading through it. I said, oh, I could read this multiple times. This would be fun to memorize even. But yeah, you just kind of sit with the ideas after you read it, and then you'll go over it, and then you'll discover something new, a line within a line type thing. He was very good at doing stuff like that too.
Right.
So you can probably why it was as popular as it was for as long as it was for with so many people, because you could read it for enjoyment over and over again, because you would still always get something new out of it.
And then it would stick in your mind as true. And I do want to emphasize, he's right that because it's in the poetic form he gave it, it feels more true than just something said, which I find, and we've meditated on that a lot in our writing of poetry, how poetry contains truth in a way prose doesn't, and that is a very interesting phenomenon.
Yes, and I get what you're saying, and I can't explain it though.
I know. He doesn't either. He just says, I know. And it's like, maybe if I tried to do it in prose, it would take longer and it wouldn't be as good. And you can try if you think you can. So.
It's a bit like beauty, You could say, well, that person or that thing or that painting, that's really beautiful. What's beauty? I don't know, but I know it when I see it, right?
Right.
This the phrase goes, and that's it, right?
And that's it. Okay, that's enough Pope for one evening. We will definitely come back, and I want to go through. It would be great to work through the whole thing in detail. Bombard us in the comments if you actually want us to do that. What I think is important for our 250th anniversary meditation is to go through what he says about society and government, because that actually is really critical to the way the founders thought about what they were up to. Okay, so we'll see you next week for more Pope. Bye.